It was only last year that the 2017 Cleveland Browns became the second team in NFL history to go 0-16 since the '08 Lions. If you were only alive for those teams' failures, you're in for a treat because the NFL has had a history of teams that were tragically bad. These are the top 10 worst teams in NFL history since the merger. To start off this list is the 1990 New England Patriots, which leads to my first rule of thumb. If your starting quarterback is wearing a neck roll, you're going to lose a lot of games. On and off the field, this team was in a state of disarray. After a heartbreaking Week 1 loss, the Patriots followed up with a win in the second game of their season. 3 of the Patriots players were so happy about the win that they were accused of standing naked in front of and harassing female reporter Lisa Olson. To make matters even worse, once questioned about it, the Patriots owner Victor Kiam made a joke about it, resulting in even more fines for the team. It was clear that this team was focused on many things, but winning was not a priority, as they followed up with 14 straight losses. Their leading scorer was their tight end, with only 5 touchdowns on the year, which was the same total as their entire receiving corps combined. During one of their only nationally televised games that season, they were down 9-0 before the Washington Redskins even took a single offensive snap. Are you wondering where those points came from? On the first drive, they fumbled a handoff, resulting in a scoop and score for the defense. On the second drive, they were pinned after a 3-and-out, only to accidentally snap the ball through the end zone on a punt. That being said, they finished the season strong, selling out the final game of the season in Foxborough. The only problem is the vast majority of fans in the stadium are rooting for the visitor Giants. The New York Giants were so popular, fans had trouble getting home tickets, so they decided to show their support at Foxborough. Rich Cody became the head coach for the Jets the year previous to this, and in his first season led the Jets to a league-worst 3-13. As a Jets fan, you think you can't go down from here, but the NFL gods do not care about your feelings. That offseason, the Jets took the spend money to win games approach, spending $70 million in free agents and rookie contracts. That was more money spent than any team that offseason, and it led to the exact opposite effect on the team. They thought their answer was getting rid of Boomer Esiason, but there was issues much bigger than that. To start, his replacement, Neil O'Donnell, was an unproven winner and, well, cursed. During the warm-ups of a preseason game, he tore his calf muscle by slipping on the Jets logo. It was a sign for what to come. He would return later in the season only to go 0-6 and have his season ended by shoulder injury. I can't just point him out for the faults of the Jets though, as they led the league in turnovers and were almost dead last in points allowed. Number 8, the 1980 New Orleans Saints. This was an iconic season for the Saints, but for none of the reasons you would hope for. The team performed so poorly this season that their own fans would coin the name the Aints. Yes, it was Saints fans who invented this legendary name, which teams have used against them to this day. Their 1-15 record doesn't even do them justice, as their only win was against the 4-12 Jets, in which they only won by a single point. In addition to that, they had another win opportunity against the 49ers, in which they were up 35-7 at halftime. The 49ers ended up coming back to win the game 38-35 in overtime, and remains the largest comeback in NFL history during a regular season game to this day. The sad part is, they actually had a solid quarterback in Archie Manning. He couldn't keep it together though, as he was sacked 40 times and threw 20 interceptions during the season. They were the first NFL team to go 1-15 in league history. Number 7, the 1981 Baltimore Colts. Another iconic season to talk about, but again for none of the reasons you would hope for. This is the first time in NFL history that a team was so bad that the owner forcefully started calling plays himself. It was only one game, but Bob Irsay made it his goal to embarrass the coaching staff and players that season to the tune of their 2-14 record. Their only 2 wins were against the New England Patriots for a combined total of 3 points. Don't let that fool you though, because they were not better than the Patriots that season. The Colts set the record for most points, touchdowns, and yards allowed in the season that year, with only the latter being surpassed in recent history. They also set the record for my favorite stat, which is the least amount of punts fielded, with only 12. If you're thinking there is no way they only fielded 12 punts during the entire season, I'm here to inform you what happened. That is the result of a team averaging 25 first downs allowed per game. The even sadder part about this is the following season might have been even worse, finishing 0-8-1 only to have a strike-shortened season. Number 6, the 1971 Buffalo Bills. The head coach resigning before the season even starts is usually a sign for bad things to come. John Roach's resignation forced personal director Harvey Johnson into the interim head coach role for a second time. The previous time was in 1968, in which the Bills went 1-10-1. This season was even worse. The Bills would go on to lose their first 10 games, extending their winless streak to 17 from the previous season. To no surprise, their quarterback was an abomination, throwing for only 11 touchdowns along with 26 interceptions. The Bills had the lowest scoring offense and allowed the most points ever over a 14-game season. The sad part is they had one of the best running backs in NFL history in O.J. Simpson at the helm, who had a solid year with 742 rushing yards, but his 5 touchdowns would be the lowest of his career. Number 5, the 1973 Houston Oilers. Fun fact, Oilers quarterback Dan Passerini was sacked so many times this season that they invented the use of flakjack in NFL play because of him. The Houston Oilers' offensive line was horrendous, and their offensive production reflected, ranking dead last in rushing yards and sacks allowed. But their offense was not even the weak point of this team. While their offense was only able to produce an average of 14.2 points per game, their defense was allowing an average of 31.9 points per game. Fittingly, their negative 248 point differential is the 9th most ever, and would be even worse if they were playing a full 16-game season. The stat that takes the cake for me is negative 25 in turnover differential, which is second to only one team on this list. Number 4, the 2009 St. Louis Rams. Believe it or not, the worst Rams team was not coached by Jeff Fisher. Nope, this was actually Steve Spagnuolo's first season as a head coach, which was the first step on the way to his 11-41 overall head coaching record. The 1-15 record this season doesn't even do the team justice, as their only win was against the Detroit Lions, who were fresh off their 0-16 season the year previous. Their negative 261 point differential is the second most in NFL history, and their 10.9 points per game is the 6th lowest ever during a 16-game season. In a league that was becoming so pass dependent, the Rams only accounted for 12 passing touchdowns, including one from their kicker Josh Brown, which coincidentally was against the beat-down Lions. This was an all-around disastrous season, with their only sign of hope being from their Pro Bowler, Steven Jackson. They continued feeding the ball on the way to more and more losses. I hate on Jeff Fisher, but the man was a master of producing 7 and 9 teams. Just enough to keep your job and live life on the edge. Number 3, the 2008 Detroit Lions. As a player, you never want to look in the stands and see the just win one game signs. I can't even blame the fans because it took the Lions from week 16 of the 2007 season to week 3 of the 2009 season to end their winless drought. This team was horrendous on both sides of the ball. Thankfully, they had who would become the most dangerous receiver in the NFL in Calvin Johnson, but not much support around him. Their 16.8 points per game was actually only 27th in the NFL, which isn't that bad by worst team standard, but it is their defense which puts them so high on this list. The Lions gave up 517 points this season for an average of 32.3 points allowed per game, which are both in the top 3 for worst offensive seasons ever. Needless to say, the Lions had to clean house in the front office following this awful season, as they became the first team in NFL history to go 0-16. Number 2, the 2017 Cleveland Browns. I'm happy to report in 2018 that the Cleveland Browns have removed the paper bags from their heads, especially since the departure of Coach Hugh Jackson. It's unlikely they make the playoffs this season, but anything was better than that last 2-season stint. In 2017, they became the second team in NFL history to go 0-16 and the first to go 1-31 in a 2-season span. What makes that even more unbearable is the fact that they were practically handed their last Week 17 game. The Pittsburgh Steelers benched all of their best players, including Ben Roethlisberger and Le'Veon Bell, and the Browns were still handed a big fat L to make losing history. While some may argue that the 08 Lions were a worse team because of their point differential, I argue that the Browns were even worse because of their turnover differential. Not only did they turn over the ball more than any team in the NFL with a whopping 41 turnovers, they also forced the least amount of turnovers with only 13. Quarterback DeShone Kizer compared himself to the body of Cam Newton and the mind of Tom Brady before the season. His words, not mine. Fittingly, Browns quarterbacks combined for a total of 39 turnovers on the season, making it impossible to win any game. Number 1, the 1976 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. As much as I want to put the Browns or the Lions number 1 on this list because I was alive to see it, it wasn't until this century that the Bucs were even in the conversation with any other team for worst in NFL history. This is the Bucs' first season in the NFL, being a part of the expansive draft. The vast majority of the players involved were aging veterans with no to little medical information provided. Thus, the Bucs ended up with 17 players on injured reserve before the season even started. Cue the birth of the worst team ever. This was the first team in the Super Bowl era to go winless, earning a 0-14 record. They averaged only 8.9 points per game, which is the 4th fewest ever. It took them until the 3rd game to score a single point and were shut out a total of 5 times on the season. The most they ever scored during a game was 20 points. To put that in perspective, the 2017 Browns scored 20 or more points in 4 of their games, along with the Lions in 8. If it would have been a full 16-game season, they were on pace to have the lowest points for, in the top 3 for most points allowed, and by far the highest point differential in a single season. The 1976 Bucs are, by far, the worst team in NFL history. What I will say, though, is with their head coach John McKay lacking coaching ability, he made up for in great one-liners. Here are some of his best lines which attempted to make light at a very dark situation. At a post-game press conference, he said to the media, "You guys don't know the difference between a football and a bunch of bananas." At the following week's press conference, a member of the media left a case of bananas at his door, so he said the following time, "You guys don't know the difference between a football and a Mercedes-Benz." The media asked him about his kicker Pete Rozesky's nervousness at playing in front of him, and McKay said, "That's unfortunate, as I plan on attending all games." He also said after some losses, "We've determined that we can't win at home, we can't win on the road, what we need is a neutral site." Thank you very much for watching this video, and be sure to like, comment, and subscribe